Greetings, fellow insomniacs. It's your friend and Frank, good old Chunky Larry, and I am your host on another episode of Creature Features. Wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, I've mentioned I'm Chunky Larry, so we've gotten that out of the way. But we are continuing and ending the theme of May of the Dead. And I could not think of a better way to close the month out than talking about a fucking banger of a fucking zombie film. And I have done this new thing on the show where when I have a guest come on, I allow them to pick. And it makes it exciting for me because I don't really, like, eventually when they tell me, I know what I'm walking into, but I never know what I'm walking into with these. And I've been taking people that I personally really enjoy in the world of TikTok right now, and talking with those people, because I've watched these people create for months, sometimes years, sometimes. And the person that I have with me tonight is absolutely one of those people. I've been following her for a very long time. I am always blown away by the depths that she'll go in the world of horror just to entertain you. She watches it all. She does not have any fucking squeal point where she says, no, that's too much. She always tries. And it's one of the most admirable fucking things about her. She seems like the sweetest lady in the world, but she watches some depraved fucking shit, boy. Let me tell you. I am thrilled beyond belief to announce, ladies and gentlemen, Sparkle in the Darkness. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh man, I am fucking phenomenal. So I've been following you for years now, at least 2 years. And like we've interacted a little bit here and there, but I'm always amazed at how sweet and kind you come off. And then you're like, yeah, let's talk about Salo. It's just like, what the shit? Just the dichotomy of that is really fucking interesting to me.
Yeah.
And so when I get TikTokers on here, I want to talk about TikTok because that's, a big part of my time. And I'm sure it's a big part of your time as well. But what I'd really like to know specifically from you is, when creating content, how do you find you skate a line per se? And what I mean by that is, we all have lives outside of being on social media where we have to be like a stand-up individual and all that shit. But you also have, interests that are kind of unpopular in the sense that we're horror fans.
Yes.
So for you, do you see this as like your world where you get to get all of that out, or like, how do you see TikTok, specifically horror talk?
I love it because it's really hard to find, at least around here, like-minded people that are into the same kind of things, other than like my brother and the convention that we go to like twice a year. And it's the complete opposite because I'm a school teacher, so
I
it's
didn't
like
want to put your business out in the street. That was where I was going with it.
Yeah, it's such a major difference, like night and day. And once in a while, my kids will say, "Oh, I saw you." First of all, they're too young to be on TikTok, but
Right?
yeah, I'm sure they're like, "Oh my goodness, you don't live at school," Yeah. So I feel like I have an alter ego or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you pick content, is there something specific that you go for, or do you just want to see it all? Like what's
Yeah.
the thing that motivates you for the films that you pick?
It's anything goes, or anything that I hear other content creators or other people talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I spend a lot of time like online on Google and, different sites, and I'll see things, and it's like you go down a rabbit hole. Or if I'm, checking out like Spooky Rice on YouTube talking about disturbing movies, just things like that.
And so to bring it back to the zombie genre, what was your first kind of go with zombies, and what would you say your favorite zombie film is? I'm asking the easy questions.
Yeah. I was never really into the whole zombie thing. I thought they were pretty lame at first, but then like 28 Days Later came out, and I know it's like an infection movie. There's this whole debate on like, are they really zombies? Are they not? They're not really dead. They're infected with the rage virus. But 28 Days Later, and then when the remake of Dawn of the Dead came out and they were fast zombies, I was like, okay. And then around that time, not too long after that, you have The Walking Dead. So yeah, I would say that's what got me more interested. Before then, I wasn't really into the whole zombie thing.
And so, like, what are your thoughts on something like a World War Z, which is also in that same kind of vein?
Oh, I love it.
You liked World War Z?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm judging you now.
I wasn't like a huge fan of Brad Pitt before, but I liked the movie. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I dig it.
There's something about fast zombies that just, I would be so screwed,
And
you know,
so this film, I feel, also has that same distinction as something like 28 Days Later, or Train to Busan, or a myriad of other films that are considered to be zombie films, but are kind of by other people, like purists, considered to not be zombie films. And so we've discussed this month 28 Days Later, Train to Busan, and Pet Cemetery 2, which I thought was like an inspired fucking choice. But where do you stand on these films? Do you feel that they're zombie films, or do you feel that they're something different?
I mean, I just consider them all zombie films. I know that I guess the correct term would be like infection films, but to me, they're all zombies.
And
That's
so this is if you were playing a drinking game and you had to take a shot every time Chunky Larry said allegorical, here you go, you're about to get fucking drunk. But I've always looked at the zombie genre as an allegory to whatever is going on kind of culturally at the time. And I've made this argument a couple of times this month, but so I'm going to do kind of a summarized version of it. And so, Night of the Living Dead, civil rights, fucking Dawn of the Dead, consumerism, Day of the Dead, military, 28 Days Later was the swine flu, hand, foot, mouth, that shit. And then, Train to Busan is SARS. The sadness is COVID. And, we're gonna get into all of the film itself, but I wanted to tell you kind of a story. And I just find this really fascinating. And so in 2020, as COVID is starting to ramp up in January of 2020, Taiwan closed its borders and went on a lockdown. And they have a whole unit that's specifically already put in place for the case of some disease. And it's because SARS hit them as hard as it did in 2003, I want to say 2002, somewhere in that ballpark when SARS was as big as it fucking was. So they created this system that was put in place, and we had a system very similar to that, that was unended by our president at the time. And I'm not going to get fucking political on this, but it was not available when this global pandemic happened. So there was no reaction. But in Taiwan, there was an immediate reaction. And through the 2020 year, they lost 7 people. 7 people in the entire year, because they had stringent laws put in place to protect their people. If somebody was flying in, they had to go through a whole quarantine uh, where they had to take a quarantine cab to a quarantine hotel where they stayed away from everybody for 2 weeks, and then they were considered low risk, so they could then enter Taiwan. And nothing stopped in Taiwan. Everything was still business as usual, but they had very stringent rules when this took place, and they kept it at bay. And over the course of the year, they got very laxed with those rules, those mandates, and they saw an uptick in March of 2021, and deaths started to occur. And it's like skyrocketed because they stopped taking it seriously. And I think it's a perfect thing to keep in the back of your mind as we discuss the sadness. But before we do, I want to go to the world of IMDb, and I do this every week. I pull a random synopsis from IMDb. I try to find something that's wordy that we can probably, hopefully, potentially make fun of. But here we go. After a year of combating a pandemic with relatively benign symptoms, a frustrated nation finally lets its guard down. This is when the virus spontaneously mutates, giving rise to a mind-altering plague. The streets erupt into violence and depravity as those infected are driven to enact the most cruel and ghastly things they can think of. Murder, torture, rape, and mutilation are only the beginning. A young couple is pushed to its limits of sanity as they try to reunite amid the chaos. The age of civility and order is no more. There is only the sadness. Now that feels like it was written by the studio themselves. That does not feel like a IMDb user contributed one, but it still gives so fucking much away to the film. And it's because of those things I have created this game that I like to play to get us all going and to get the audience more aware of who you are. And so it's called Synopsis Obscura. And what I'd like for you to do right now, Sparkle, is I would like you to, without fucking giving anything away, explain the sadness and sell us.
Okay, can I use, do I have to censor my language?
Not at all. Not at fucking all.
Okay. Viral pandemic spreads in Taiwan. Everybody loses their shit, and it all goes to hell. Basically, is what I would say, without giving any kind of day.
I love it. Perfect. And it
very concise. Very. I think that pretty
exactly.
Much sums it up.
and so that's the thing that I like about this game, is that it forces you to kind of say it without saying it, because now we could say everything. Let's talk about the violence in this fucking movie. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I feel like there's no punches pulled. Like the scene specifically when they're in the subway, and it's so random because it's just a fucking dude with a knife, and it's like an explosion of violence. And I know, me personally, as like an American, I see violence in a mass grouping of people, and my brain goes one way. But I don't know, what did you think of that scene?
That scene totally stayed with me. Like, holy crap. I went to New York after watching that because it was summer break. And I remember getting in a subway and the doors wouldn't open. We were stuck there for a couple minutes. And the first thing I thought of was that freaking scene. I'm like, shit, like this could really happen. I mean,
you were looking for dudes.
It was crazy. Right? Insane. I'm like, you're side denying everybody, and it's New York City, so you have all kinds of people on that subway, but that scene was insane. I didn't even know, like, when I was watching it, like, it was hard to like register everything that was happening because everything was happening all at one time.
Now,
It
is
was
there a
crazy.
moment in the film where you like your oh shit moment? What's your oh shit moment?
Oh my gosh. Okay, like my real oh shit moment. Well, the first part, with the older lady,
Mm-hmm.
when they first, like the first thing that happened, I was like, oh shit, okay, this is all right, we're doing this.
With the
But when
fry
that,
grease?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, okay, so yeah. And then after that, it was like craziness. But my real oh shit moment was the one in the hospital with Molly in the wheelchair.
The skull fuck scene.
Holy, I was watching it. Thank God I was watching it by myself. I I literally screamed out loud. Like I think I traumatized my poor dog. I could not believe that that was crazy. That was so tough.
So,
I will not, it lives rent free in my head. And yeah.
I was I was getting ready to record this episode. And so I'm watching it on the iPad and doing dishes while I'm watching it because, just multitasking, right? So my wife, she's, going and she's passing me to go like have a cigarette or whatever. And that scene is what's playing because it's always that scene that's playing when somebody
Oh,
uninitiated fucking walks by, right? It's
always. Mhm.
like if I'm watching Pearl, it's her riding the fucking circus. It's always that scene. And so
Mhm.
I'm doing the dishes, minding my own fucking business, and this chick's getting fucked in the eye socket by, this weird dude, right?
Mhm.
My wife, she stops, she takes a beat, she like cocks her head at me, and she's like, "Hey, what the fuck are you watching in my kitchen?"
Oh man.
Like,
I could just hear it because I'm thinking she's probably like, what the fuck are you watching?
yeah, and so like, it takes a lot to be married to me. I really fucking can only imagine. Like, I've got fucking Michael Myers sitting right here and Chucky back there, and it's like you're making a commitment when you fucking commit to this kind of crazy, right? So I
Yes.
feel like it's like par for the course. Like, of course, he's got to be watching a movie where a chick's getting her eyeball fucked by a dude. Like, it just seems like a natural occurrence to me. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, of course. It's just, babe, look at this fucking chicks get fucking that. Like, who thinks of that, right? And she's like, who
Right.
watches that?
Yeah. Yeah. I usually watch movies like with my brother because he loves horror. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm not going to watch that one with him. I'm glad I didn't. And I'm like, just watch it. And I'm thinking, he probably thinks, what the fuck did you make me watch? Yeah.
Another one that I used to make people watch back in the day was Cannibal Ferox, which is, I don't know if you've ever seen Cannibal Ferox,
Mm-mm.
but
No.
so in the early 80s, they had a lot of cannibal films and shit, right? So Cannibal Holocaust being the most popular one. Everybody knows about Cannibal Holocaust. So Cannibal Ferox, it's came out roughly in the same time period. And so it's very similar in tone and approach. But there's a scene where Giovanni Lombardo Radice gets his fucking dick cut off, and they're like holding it like somebody eats it or whatever the fuck, right? And so whenever I would have people that worked at the video store with me come over my house, it's like, hey, have you ever seen Cannibal Ferox? But I wouldn't say Cannibal Ferox. I'd say, hey, have you ever seen Make Them Die Slowly? And they're like, no, what's that about? It's like, oh, no, here, come have a seat. So,
Allow me to introduce you.
yes, it's like, allow me to traumatize you for the next hour and a half.
Okay. I love that you worked at a video store.
Oh, I worked at so many fucking video stores, dude. Like,
Nice.
I worked at Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, and a bunch of mom and pops, and like um video like that's a whole fucking like thing in and of itself. But I have a theory about the sadness, and I want to hear how you feel about this. So I feel that the infected or the zombies are still while they're acting outside of themselves, almost like, somebody would act on like a rabies or something to that effect, where you still have your cognitive functions, you can still remember things, but you just can't control certain things, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like that inner voice that says, do something awful, that you shut out. It's like that switch is turned off and that inner voice is just there.
Mhm.
So I feel that and this is just my interpretation, obviously, but I feel that they're doing the things that part of them wants to do. So, like, for example, the guy in the subway, the one with the umbrella who ends up fucking the chick in the eye socket. Um, he comes off as like an incel, to use one of the popular terms. Like he just like, I'm being a nice guy. Why are you acting like this to me? Before he
Mhm.
even goes crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he becomes kind of like a sexual sadist.
Mhm.
And you know, her boyfriend, he feels like and I'm just going to toss out every fucking buzzword I can in this little period of whatever. He is gaslighting his girlfriend. And you see that even in the beginning of the film when they're laying in bed and it's supposed to be them being in love and kind of sweet. He's manipulating her, like with the trip and the way that they, interact. He takes her food and he's like, hey, you don't want this, right? And he's already fucking eating it. Like that's his fucking role, kind of, even at that point. And there are relationships, at least in my opinion, that are that way, where they're emotionally abusive and he feels powerless. So his motivation to get to her is to reassert that power, to have power in some kind of way. It's not that he really loves her or that he wants to protect her. It's that he wants to feel power because he doesn't feel power. Because
Mhm.
every situation he interacts in, he's powerless. And so, like, when the neighbor fucking attacks him with the garden shears and he's like, I want to fuck your girlfriend. And he's just, you have to think that there's probably some truth to that he, is always friendly, but he always kind of had an eye for his
Oh,
girlfriend.
absolutely.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And,
Yes, I
and
do.
so, um, what I want to know is where do you feel he turned?
The boyfriend?
Yeah,
Um, I guess along the way, but like you said, I feel like he did have it in him
yeah,
to be that way. So I guess once all of that happened, and you get infected, it's like there was no more filter or anything holding him back. But I feel like
but
he always had it in him. You know what I mean? And it was
yeah,
just now, okay, now I could just let it all out. You know what I mean?
yeah, and so for me, I feel like they do this scene where he's at the water and he sees the reflection and the reflection attacks him, but it's like he, kind of falls back and nothing's there.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's the point, that, up to that point, he was just kind of scared. But then after that point, he's like, I'm coming to find you. They start
Hmm.
messaging each other and he's like, I'm coming for you.
Hmm.
And is she pregnant?
Oh gosh, didn't even think about that. What do you think?
I
I
think
didn't
she
even
is.
like, my mind is like,
I think she's pregnant.
what?
I think that because, she's with the doctor at the end of the film, and the
Mhm.
doctor is experimenting on these babies. And, you know, it's almost like I feel, and this is just again my kind of observation, is that she's been combating the idea of abortion. And being confronted by this doctor and his interest in her, maybe that's why she's not infected. These are just, things that, play out in my head when I'm watching it. And so, she has the interaction with the doctor, who, if I'm not mistaken, is the doctor who was on the news show that he's watching at the beginning of the film. If I'm not mistaken, that's the same fucking guy. And, he is trying to fix it, but he is also infected, and again, it's those inner thoughts that usually lay dormant, not having to anymore. And it talking about, our base nature. And I don't know, that I think that that's one of the more interesting ideas that I feel I was able to take away from it.
Mm-hmm. I think you need to do a video on this.
I might. I mean,
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
We currently
but I
are.
think you need to expand on this. Yeah.
But let's get into Reapers. So on the show, we rate the films on Reapers. 0 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. Where are you coming in with the sadness?
5 being the highest?
Yeah.
I would say a 4.
A 4? And so, like, what are your low points? What are the things that kind of make it a 4 instead of a 5?
I mean, it would have to be, I don't want to say like, I don't want to say gratuitous, but I feel like some of it was like over the top. Maybe that's what made it a 4 to me.
Okay. But that's also kind of what makes it a 4, isn't it?
Yeah. I think maybe it was the damn skull fucking scene. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what made it a 4 and what put me off. The babies. I mean, I guess it's good that it was more implied, but that was so fucked up.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you said, it pulls no punches. It's that kind of movie.
It is very unapologetic in terms of, zombie films. I'm also coming in with a 4 for this. And I feel that its strengths are also kind of its weaknesses. And what I mean by that is, like, the strength of this film is its violence, but it's also its weakness. The strength of this film is leaving a lot of it open to interpretation, but that's also its weakness, that, you want to be able to interpret the film and take pieces away and kind of make it your own. And so Vagary allows for that, but I think some of this stuff should be, like, rules should be put in place. Like, this is what happens. Like, if you get bitten by a zombie, you know that you're going to become a zombie. Just so the audience has skin in the game. So, like, with Train to Busan, you understand the rules of what is happening in the course of that film. And so when things happen, you're much more invested in it. I also feel like because they get away from, people in a way, because again, they're just savagery, that there's not a lot of human element for you to latch onto as an audience member. And so I think that, like for me, I know a lot of people don't like the Terrifier movies, right? But I feel that, the reason that they don't like them is why I love them. So it's the same thing with this. And, I really fucking love this movie, but I understand that some of those things are the reasons why it isn't a perfect movie. And so, yeah, but Sparkle, please tell people where they can find you.
TikTok, Sparkle in the Darkness, or Spooky Scary Sparkle, either one of those. Same thing on Instagram, Spooky Scary Sparkle, and YouTube, Sparkle in the Darkness. But I'm mostly on TikTok.
And if you guys are here just because you're fans of Sparkle and you heard that she was going to be on the show, but you enjoyed the conversation, you want to find out more about us, you can do that in a couple of different ways. You could start by liking us on Facebook, facebook.com/CreaturePod, following us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok @CreaturePod. We're also on YouTube @CreaturePod. So subscribe, follow, like, comment, all the things that are required of getting this into more ears and eyes. And by all means, fucking share us and tell us what we're doing. Tell us if we're doing a good job. That helps us tremendously. But we are going to be wrapping up May of the Dead. We're putting a little bow on this motherfucker zombie, and we're going to see the zombies next year in May. And we're moving into a new place, and that new place I fucking am really excited for. We are gonna go camping, y'all. It is gonna be all summer camp horror films. We're calling it Summer Camp Nightmare, and we're starting the month off strong with The Final Girls. This is a fucking hell of a movie. If you haven't seen it, here is your sign that it is now time for you to watch it, so you're not in the dark when we start spoiling fucking major plot points of The Final Girls. But we're gonna get out of here. So for Sparkle and for myself, again, my name is Chunky. This has been another episode of the Creature Features Podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, listen with someone you trust.